we've just had another FAQ drop for the Old World. This covers the base rules, the Ravening Hordes, and also the Forces of Fantasy. Doesn't seem to be anything specifically in there for the Armies of Renown, the Renegade factions, whatever you want to call them, legacy armies. But there are definitely some things that affect them in there as well, so worth keeping an eye out for those. I'll try and point them out as we get through. So, what have we got? Well, first of all, let's take a look at the 11-page document of the base rule FAQ errata. Something to point out here, there are rules changes that they've put under the FAQ. This is fine, I don't think it really matters, but there are some actual changes to the game as opposed to just clarifications, and it should make some change to how some armies play, a little bit of a difference made in the meta as well. So, first of all, fly. I'm glad we're starting off here, because this is a weird one. So, the first paragraph has been changed to effectively clarify that having fly gives you a special fly move. I'm not really sure why this is in here, and I don't think anyone really is. As far as I can tell, functionally, you still get to do the same things. You can still have movement increases stacked on top of your normal fly move. You can still triple march if you're in marching column. The only sort of noticeable difference that I've been able to find is that the dragged along rule, for example, the Skaven war machines, the Plague Furnace and similar, as it stood, they would use the movement of a unit next to it. So if you cast Steed of Shadows on a unit of Clan Rats in marching column, theoretically you'd get up to ludicrous speeds with a 36-inch range move. I think this just clears things up, basically. So I think functionally for most of the game, this doesn't change anything. Monster handlers, again, just clarifying as far as I can tell, making it clear that the monster loses a wound on a 1-4, on a 5+, one of the handlers is removed instead. This is weird if there's ever a case of monster handlers with multiple wounds. I don't think there's any in the game at the moment, so that's probably fine. But something to keep an eye on, might need to be changed down the line, potentially. Reserve move, this is updated. So as far as I can tell, this is just clarifying the language as well. Doesn't seem to be any major changes here. Basically just means that you can't fail a charge and then make a reserve move at the end of the shooting phase, which I don't think you could do anyway, but just clarifies that all here for us. Nothing on the second page, and then straight into the FAQs. So first of all, general principles. This is one of the big changes. This is in combination with other things. So first of all, what happens if a hit is rolled on a scatter die for an object that moves in a random direction? Do I use the small arrow on the hit icon to determine the direction? The change here is that they are now clarifying this as things that move randomly, scatter using a scatter die as described on page 95. This is a change. Previously, things like Fanatics don't scatter, or templates, vortex spells, they didn't scatter, they moved in a random direction. And there was a difference in language there that meant that if you rolled a hit, you didn't stay still. You'd use the little arrow icon, or, if you're somehow using a weird scatter die that doesn't have one of those on, you would just, re-roll and move in a random direction. This change now means that Fanatics, they have a 1 in 3 chance to not move on the second turn. I don't think this is a huge change in and of itself to Fanatics, although there are 2 other nerfs to them later on down the document. But this is, this is an interesting change, and I think it's, I don't know that I like it, but it is a nice sort of curbing of Fanatics on turn 2 onwards from when they're released from the unit. Then we've got some of my opponent's attacks cause multiple wounds to be lost per unsaved wound they cause. In what order are those unsaved wounds applied to my unit? This was previously clarified, so basically saying that anything that would kill a model, like Killing Blow, goes first, and then everything else goes after, and you just do it in the most beneficial way to the player rolling the attacks. This has now been changed, so it's now a case of you just go from the largest to smallest. So if there's anything that would automatically kill, you do those wounds first. Then if there's anything that would do, for example, 3 wounds, you do that. Then 2 wounds, you do that. 1 wound, you do that. So I believe the way that works is if you, for example, shot a cannonball through a unit, an Empire cannon that has D3+1 damage, You do 3 unsaved wounds, and you then roll your wounds, and you get a 1, a 2, and a 3 on the D3, which equals 2, 3, and 4 wounds. I believe the way that works is you allocate it as a 4, 3, 2, even though you don't know what the damage is until you've rolled the dice. I think this is just a very common sense fix. Yeah, I think this is good. I think this is better than it was before. Previously, when it was allocated in the most beneficial way possible, you would have had it as if there was, say, 3 wound ogres, and you were somehow doing 2 wounds and 1 wound at an initiative step. The most beneficial way would be to take a 2, then a 1, a 2, then a 1, the 2, then a 1. This just feels a little bit clunky and gamey almost, so it's nice that they're just saying all of them at a certain damage profile are done, and then move on to the next step. So I like that change. Nothing else in here on page number 3, so moving on to page number 4. What constitutes a move? Quite simply, if you touch a model or unit and change its position in any way, it is moved. Apart from, for example, War Machine's pivoting. So basically what it means is anything that picks you up and moves you, moves you. It's worded quite poorly, I think, honestly. This feels like they've half written a sentence, gone, oh, we'll edit it, and then not edited it later on down the line, which is interesting. But this clarifies things. Spells like Travel Mystical Pathways. I think Travel Mystical Pathways says that it counts as moving, but there are some spells that pick you up and move you, but don't clarify that you count as having moved. They'll say that you can't move again, but in this case, you can't, for example, pick up a cannon and then move it and shoot it because they have move or fire. So you can't get around being able to reposition your cannons, try and get some tasty flank shots into cavalry or anything like that. This is if you move a model, it's moved, apart from when it's not. What is the furthest a model can move? No model can move more than twice its movement characteristic, or when the movement is determined by a dice roll, further than the distance rolled. Now, this doesn't actually make sense in the way. So obviously for a charge roll, it's the dice roll plus your movement. I think we can all infer what it's picking up there, but it is a little clunkily worded. And then it says there are, of course, exceptions. So again, answering a question and then saying it's like this, but mostly. Sometimes it's not. Marching column, triple moving, that makes sense. And yeah, moving through units as well. So this is fine. This is just standardizing and clarifying what you can move. It does go on to say when a unit wheels, those at the rear don't actually go all the way around. So your wheel, if you wheel a really long unit, it doesn't go, the back bit doesn't go like that. It goes sort of in a straight diagonal, which I think is fine just for logistics. Sure, it doesn't actually translate maybe quite as well as you'd expect, especially if you're moving around something. But in the case of just not losing your mind and having to bust out a complex abacus and some protractors, I think this is a good change, good clarification. It also says down the bottom, note that when a unit is permitted a free maneuver before or after moving, this is free in that it does not count towards the move itself, but the limitation that no model can move more than twice its movement characteristic applies within the maneuver. What does this change? This means that you can't do stupid drilled shenanigans, which I think is probably for the best. So, as long as from where you start your move, including your drilled move, your like free reform, as long as where the model starts before it moves at all to where it ends up is less than twice its movement, you can do your sort of drilled shenanigans, reform into a marching column, snake around, get to where you need to be. But you can't do, you can't drilled out into a long line, wheel to get loads of movement, and then just move on from there. So nice clarification. Good to see that tidied up. Then we've got, can a wizard cast a conveyance spell during a turn in which they charged? No. This is another balance change. This is not an FAQ. There's nothing in the rules saying that you couldn't have done this beforehand. So what does this really mean? Most of the time, it doesn't actually affect anything, but the one big change is high elf mages. So they can take high magic, or sorry, anyone who can take high magic, I should say, but realistically, it's a high elf mage on a dragon. You can't cast Walk Between Worlds on a turn you charge, which is quite a big hit to the efficiency of it, because it's lasts until your next start of turn, and you become ethereal. Sure, that's fine, but you can't then use it to keep you safe in combat, realistically. You can position your unit to be charged, but that doesn't feel doesn't feel great. So quite a big change there for high elf players more than anything else. If you're putting your high magic caster in with some sword masters, that's probably a big hit. Or if you've got a dragon caster, that's a big hit there as well. You probably want to be looking at maybe battle magic for the double move, something along those lines. Speaking of battle magic, there is a clarification here. How many magic missiles or magical vortices can a wizard attempt to cast during the shooting phase? As many as they know. And then it goes on to say there are exceptions, because you can know extra spells but can't cast any more. I don't know that item exists. I haven't seen it. If you do know, let me know in the comments, because I was racking my brain trying to think of what it is. But this is good. This is the way that the majority of the player base has been playing the game. It's nice to see that continued, basically just saying, yes, you can actually shoot both your magic missiles. Lovely stuff. So then 2 characters are engaged in a challenge while their units battle around them. At the end of the round, the losing unit might fall back in good order or give ground. If the enemy pursues or follows up, does the challenge continue? Yes. Basically just saying that if the combat continues at all, so if the unit's caught and the unit continues, you're still in that challenge. It doesn't matter. He's coming for you. That's nice just to have clarified there. We've got units with the Motley Crew special rule use the armor value of the majority of the models. What if there is an even number of different armor values? In such cases, use the better armor value. This is again how the majority of people were playing things, but some people were using odd-numbered frontages to get around this even being a discussion point, which is fair enough. Honestly, odd-numbered frontages often end up being better because you might get that extra model on the other side of your opponents. But what this translates to is, for example, Black Orcs, you can have in the front rank, say you've got 8 wide, you can have 4 with shields, 4 with great weapons, and you'll still get that 3-up armor save. So nice to have clarified one way or the other. Then we've got, if a model with a split profile has the impact hits X special rule, do all parts of the model cause impact hits? No. I'm not going to read the rest of it. It's just no. I have seen people complaining that rules like this have made it into the FAQ, which I think people need to get a grip and stop doing that. Some people are trying to argue this. It's very much a bad faith argument, but the fact that they've put it into the FAQ is a good thing, because we can just say, look, this is obviously dumb, this is an edge case, we don't need to talk about it, stop trying to get around the rules, you gamey bastard. Then we've got, if a unit with the impact hits rule overruns or pursues into an enemy unit, it counts having charged in the next turn, and if it moved far enough, we'll be able to make impact hits. If that unit is charged in its flank or rear by another enemy unit before the combat phase of the next turn, can it direct its impact hits against the charging enemy unit? So this is a change. This is, again, a change to how the game is played, but it is a good change thematically. I think it makes a lot of sense. Basically, what happens is it can only do impact hits into a unit that it charged into, or overran into, I should say. So what that means is, if your opponent charges you in the side with something squishy, they're not at risk of losing it, because you do D6 plus 1 strength 5 AP2 impact hits, because obviously the impact hits hit the thing that they have charged into. So great change, really big fan of that, and just makes the game feel a little bit more thematic. Again, one that people have been complaining about, but I'm really glad to see in here, just to clarify, is the armor value of a regeneration save improved by a shield or barding? No, that's great. Regen is worded quite poorly in the core rules, and it is positioned to sound like it almost might be another sort of armor save. So just glad they're clearing that up. No one realistically thought that it did, but nice to have that sorted there. Then we've got, if a model with the regeneration special rule passes its save against an attack with the multiple wounds, do I still need to roll the dice if the number of multiple wounds is generated by a dice roll? So, yes, but this only really counts for overkill. So this is just a case of, if I'm in a challenge, does it matter how many regen saves I pass? Or do I still get the benefit of multiple wounds in terms of generating my max overkill? This is fine. I think this is how most people have been playing it as well, but just nicely tidied up there. Perfect. Here's one that apparently some people have been playing this way, and I didn't know was a rule that people interpreted like this. But can models in the rear ranks of a unit shoot at a large target? Yes. you can draw line of sight to a large target over and through other models. This is interesting. I think this is just clarifying a rule that did exist. And I think I've been playing this wrong in that I didn't think this through. And it makes perfect sense when you think of it logically. Obviously, you can shoot through units to get the large target. But if you have, for example, 20 crossbows in a 5x4, you can shoot all of your crossbows at the dragon. So that's a nice change, or not change, a nice clarification. It's definitely going to change how I'm thinking about writing some lists. I'm going to play around with some dwarf quarreler blocks, maybe, see if they can threaten dragons. I'm not sure if they can. I'll have to run some numbers. And then we've got, if a model with a split profile has stomp attacks, do all parts of the model make stomp attacks? I'm sure we've just covered that one. Oh, it's the same as the impact hits. Yeah, perfect. So again, just clarifying. Obviously, no one actually thinks that it does, but now we've got that nicely tied up. Do models that cause terror cause it in models that cause fear? No. Models that cause terror cause fear in models with the fear special rule, even though such models are normally immune to fear. This is, I believe, a change to the base rules of the game, and I think it's a return to how the game used to be played, if I'm correct in understanding this. So previously, I don't believe there was anything saying that your fear-causing models took a fear test from terror-causing models, but I know previous editions of the game, this was a thing. So nice. This makes sense thematically to me. So big fan of that. Then we've got we've got some skirmish rules. So first of all, how do I determine the center of a unit of skirmishes? Basically, find the extreme models of the group, which in theory is easy, but in practice might not be super easy, and then just measure between the two and find the most central point. So interestingly, if you're playing sort of like a horseshoe shape like this, but your outskirts are further away, if the furthest models are these two on the outside, the center of the skirmish unit, when you drop a template on top of it, might not actually be on top of any models. Well, we'll get to that for template, sorry. But like the actual center of the unit is not... Yeah, it's a weird one. But it does clarify where the center of a unit of skirmishes is. So I'm glad to have that, even if it is a little bit convoluted and complicated. Next up, when a unit of skirmishers charges or is charged, some of the models cannot move far enough to form up with the rest of the unit. What happens to those models? The unit loses coherency. This means models belonging to the unit must be removed from play as casualties until the unit becomes coherent. This is a massive nerf to skirmishers, specifically small movement skirmishers like Dwarf Rangers. So what this means is previously you'd kind of just bung him in the back and go, oh, well, I don't even have to think about it. Obviously, they rank up. That's how models work. Now, if you, for example, are in a long line, you don't snap to the back of the unit. If you can't make it into the second or third or fourth rank, depending on where you are, you just die. Your model just goes away. This is, I think, in practice, a lot of skirmishers tend to be smaller units or tend to be higher move units. So outside of a couple of edge cases like Dwarf Rangers, who personally I think are stronger if you put them in open order anyway, I think it's only a nerf to big units with small movement. So I think it's fine. I don't think this is actually a problem. Some Dwarf players are going to be sad, but you've got a new book coming in less than a week, so don't worry about it too much. It'll be all right. Characters. So here's another rules change, I believe. I don't know if it was clarified before, but from the way that most of the community have been playing things, this is definitely a change to the rules. If a unit that is subject to any leadership modifiers uses the General's Inspiring Presence special rule, do they ignore the modifiers? No, they still apply. So the example I give here is Terror. Terror-causing enemies still apply a -1 leadership to the general's leadership that you're using effectively. What this really means is Inspiring Presence is no longer a I'm going to be safe bubble against the Terrorgheist, Wailing Dirge, the Scream list, basically. So this is actually a significant buff to vampire counts, which is interesting because they definitely don't need it. I'm surprised that they ruled this way. Maybe they thought it made more sense thematically for this, which I guess does make sense. But it is interesting that it's buffing one of the stronger armies in the game at the moment. What I will say is it is also a buff to Warband, I believe. You don't have to have your general in a squad to give the benefit of Warband, assuming both the models have Warband. So if you've got ranked up units with Warband, you can get up to Leadership 10, even if the general isn't in a Warband unit. Uh, if my battle standard bearer refuses a challenge and retires from combat, can other units still benefit from their hold your ground special rule? Not whilst that character's unit is still engaged with the model that issued the challenge. Battle standards are somewhat less inspirational while being used as a blanket to hide beneath. I do quite like the sassy answer there. That's good, but it makes sense. Basically, if you're not in the front of a unit, you're in the back of the unit. What is quite funny is this doesn't technically answer whether a Skaven BSB, if they voluntarily retire to the back of a unit, because they can do that at any time they're in combat. If they voluntarily retire to the back of a unit, can you still use their rerolls? I mean, realistically, we can infer from this no, but it doesn't technically answer the question. Here we go. Here's another rules change. This is not how the game has been functioning previously. My unit wishes to shoot at an enemy lone character. However, an enemy unit that is more than 3 inches away from that character presents a closer target. Can I shoot at the lone character? Yes, the rule that a lone character cannot be shot at unless they are the closest target only extends to units that they are within 3 inches of. If a unit is more than 3 inches away from the character, it does not protect them, regardless of how close it is to the enemy. So this is interesting. So you can't put, fire a unit forwards. Let's say you've got a couple of gyrocopters that have gone aggressively far forwards, and then you've got some slayers that are in front of your melee bricks, but they are within 3 inches of them. Previously, they would have been screened from shooting. Now they have to be behind that unit, or not necessarily behind, but the unit that's screening them from shooting has to be closer to the unit that's doing the shooting. So, interesting change there. I don't know that I love it. It does make it a little bit harder to use the lone characters. So this might see people move a little more towards the, I'm putting my character in a unit because it's safer. I don't know if it's enough to see that change, but that and battle magic, maybe Pillars of Flame, something interesting to work through there. Then there's a question, basically, for the Tomb King players, despite it not being in the Ravening Hordes. So the question is, if you've got a character with an armor save of 6+, with a chariot with an armor value of 4+, do you have to use the chariot's armor value? It says you use whichever armor is better. However, just use which one you want to use if you've got other rules stacked on it. So it says magical armors. Obviously, the armor value with 4+ is better, but there is often more to deciding which armor to use. Many types of magic armor confer additional bonuses. So yes, basically the light armor that Tomb King players can take to make enemy models have to reroll their successful wounds. You can still use that on a dragon. This is how I think most people have been playing it, but it's nice to have it actually spelled out. Does the presence in a unit of a character whose base takes up the space of 2 or more models in 2 or more ranks reduce that unit's rank bonus? No. What does that mean? That is so limited in scope for what it says. So as far as I can tell, what that actually means is if you've got, for example, a unit of 4 white dwarves, heavy infantry, and you've got a shield bearer character in the squad, which is a 50 by 50 base, so you're effectively taking up the space of 4 models. I believe that means that you still get the rank bonus despite only having 2 models plus a character, so 3 models. This is not worded. There's not enough here to fully answer all the questions I have about this, but I think what we can take from it is, yes, you can put your Empire character on Demigryph or your shield bearers into a squad and not have to go wider to get the benefits of rank bonuses. So I think it's good, but I'd like to see this refined further on 3 months down the line. Can a character who is within the fighting rank of their unit but not in base contact with the enemy move through the ranks that they are? No. Characters can move through the ranks into the fighting rank, but cannot move within the fighting rank. This is an interesting. Basically, just means that if you can finagle it so you get an interesting charge into your opponent, and their character's not going to end up in base to base with you, you're able to avoid them hitting you anywhere near as hard as they're going to be. So you might want to try and set up some weird angled overruns for your opponent, so that you can get some nice charges where you avoid 10% of the squad. Obviously, the rules for you have to maximize where you can. Do scupper this a little bit, but a lot of edge cases, so something to be aware of there. Or you can go in with a small frontage unit, like a chariot, for example. Has to maximize, doesn't necessarily have to maximize into the character, so as long as you're not shortest route is touching the character, Jobs are good in there. Can a character be placed among a unit's command group? Yes, this is good. The banner being in the middle of the unit still supersedes this. You have to have the banner as the most central model in the front rank, but apart from that, you can then put characters within. So you could go, if you had a wide enough frontage, you could go character, character, banner, character, character, and then on either side have the champion and the musician if you wanted to. Obviously, because the rules for how many characters you can have in the front rank, you would have to then have also a chunk of models on the sides. But I think this is a good change. When I saw this, I was like, oh, great, Bretonnian Lances, you can put characters at the front. And then I reread the Lance rule, and you could still do that. So mostly a benefit for foot sloggers, I guess. I think this is nice, especially now that you can't move within the fighting rank. So just being able to get your character more front and center feels good. Yes, that's it for this page. Then we have got, is the armor value of a ward save improved by a shield or batting? No, again, that's fine. Just clarifying it. Nobody really thinks that it does, but let's have it specifically spelled out. It's important that we have a well-written, just defined set of rules, I think, because that takes out the arguing, and then when you're trying to push the constraints of the game without being a cheat, you're trying to find an interaction that works in an interesting way, it's less feel bad for you and your opponents. War machines. If the wounds characteristic of a war machine and its crew are different, which do I use to determine unit strength? In such cases, use the wounds characteristic of the crew. It's fine. I don't think I care about that at all, realistically, but it's nice that it is defined for future use. Then in the army building rules, do the points I spend on core units within an allied contingent count towards the minimum percentage of core units overall? No, this is fine. An allied army is basically a separate army that you bring. Most places that I've seen, most events, don't allow allies, so this isn't really much of a change for me. I don't see allies all that often or at all, to be honest, but nice to have that spelled out specifically. Does a spell cast on a regimental unit affect its detachment or vice versa? No, spells that affect a unit only affect the unit they are cast on. Again, fairly common sense answer, but nice to have that spelled out, because I could see why you would think that it might affect it, despite them being two separate armies. Two separate units, I should say. How many spells does a wizard with the arcane familiar know? Basically just saying no, because you can pick spells from 2 laws, you don't get 3 spells from each if you're a level 3 caster. Different be daft. What it means is you just get to split your 3 or 4 spells, depending on your wizard level, between the 2 laws. Perfect. Law of Magic. Does the spell Plague of Rust reduce the armor value of a ward or regeneration save? No. Again, this is not something that people, I think, at this point in the game genuinely do think is the case, but it's nice to have spelled out, because it says the armor value of a ward or regeneration save. The wording on both of those rules is a little funky, so nice to have it just specifically listed. Do potions affect a model's mount? No. So this doesn't matter for the things that you normally pick, which is you might take a healing potion for, say, like a Vampire Lord on Dragon, but specifically if you take a speed potion, it doesn't make your mount faster. I think this is probably how most people played it, again, because the rules that they've now defined on multiple models in the same base for cavalry or ridden monsters. But just nice to have clarified, so happy to see that. That's all for the base rules there. We're going to quickly move on to the Ravening Hordes. This is a much shorter PDF. So for this one, this is the biggest change, in my opinion, though. Night Goblins. Change the option from include 0 to 3 Fanatics to include 0 to 1 Fanatics per 10 Night Goblins to a maximum of 3. This is fantastic. This is a nerf to Night Goblins without really just dumping them in the bin. You will no longer see little darts of 10 or 12 models arrayed in marching column specifically just to launch 3 Fanatics. I've done that. I'm very glad it's gone away. So, huge fan of this. It means if you want to play a Night Goblin army, you can still do it. It changes the minimum cost of 9 Fanatics from something like 340 points to just shy of 500 points, which there's going to be some sort of grumbling and, it's not enough of a change. Yes, the Fanatics in South themselves haven't got worse here, although they did in the main rulebook FAQ. But the Orcs and Goblin player, in theory, has less things to go around. When I was running my list, I think I ran about 70 Night Goblins, give or take. And and I ran 9 Fanatics, I'd have to find an extra, 50 odd points just to buff that up to get the full 99 Goblins. I think this is a fantastic change. I'd like to see more little tweaks like it for some of the problem issues in the game. And yes, onto the FAQs. What happens to a Fanatic that moves into or through the front arc of a Bretonnian peasant bowman equipped with defensive stakes? It waffles, it gives a little bit of a fun answer, but basically says that they are actually treated as terrain, so Fanatic dies immediately. Previously, due to the way that the ruling was worded, it wasn't. I've seen people immediately be like, I think I want to take a long line of Bretonnians that just sit in front of my bowmen, that just sit in front of the rest of my army and sit there with stakes, which I think is very funny. If you own that many stakes, I think you deserve to entirely shut down the Fanatic death bull. So I'd love to see that. But yes, nice little clarification there. It's how the rule should have worked, but it's not how it was working previously. When shooting a Doomdiver Catapult, the template can be moved d3 inches after scattering. Can I use this move to hit an enemy character within 3 inches? Yes. So, previously you could do this, but this is just clarifying. Doomdivers are the only weapon, ranged weapon in the game, I believe, that can snipe out characters in this way. So basically, what you do is you position your Doomdiver, you scatter. After you scatter, you get to roll a d3 and move in any direction. This means that you can actually snipe out those pesky level 4s that might also be your opponent's general. Very strong, very strong. Like I say, how it was before, but clarified and codified into rules. Moving on to the Tomb Kings, we've got, are the effects of the Cascad Ass's bound spell Light of Protection cumulative? So this is good. It says no. Interestingly, they don't just put it in the main rule, which is, are the effects of all spells cumulative? It would be maybe better to have that clarified in that way, because there are other rules that could benefit from being clarified. But this means that you can't stack massive negatives of minus to hit, which is good, because that is a pretty dumb interaction. Back to Orcs and Goblins, we've got the Arcane Journal. First of all, if I take a Black Orc War Boss, can I take a unit of Boar Boys as a core choice? No, a Black Orc War Boss is not an Orc War Boss. This is just to clarify, because the unit entry, I think, is called Orc War Bosses, and then it's broken down into Black Orcs and regular Orcs. But again, this is just not, I think, a question that anyone is necessarily asking because they thought it was the case, but just nice to have clarified. In a Nomadic War, I can take 1 Black Orc boss per Black Orc Chariot. If I take a Black Orc boss on a chariot, does that count? No, you can take 1 Black Orc boss per Black Orc Chariot taken as core or rare choice. It does not matter what the boss is mounted on. This bit of the sentence is what people seem to be missing. I've seen multiple people say, this doesn't clarify it at all. It does. What it's saying is, for each boss, you have to have a Black Orc Chariot in either your core or rare slots. It doesn't matter if you're mounted on one. That one is kind of just for the purposes of how many Black Orc bosses you can take. That doesn't exist. It's only the ones that you take in the core or the rare, which means the ones that you don't have any characters mounted on. Then we've got, can the Troll Hag be a general of an Orcs and Goblins tribe army using the Grand Army composition list? No, it's a rare choice. She can, however, be the general of a Troll Horde. This is an interesting one that I hadn't actually thought about. Basically, normally in a Grand Army, you can take the Troll Hag as a rare. She's like an addition onto the normal rules from the Arcane Journal. In the Troll Horde, she's taken as a regular character. So this just clarifies that because she's not in the character spot, she can't be used as a general. So this is fine. I'm not sure that you necessarily would want to take her as a general outside of Troll Horde, but again, just nice to have that clarified. Interestingly, doesn't clarify the one question that I see everyone asking, which is, can you take the Black Orc boss on Black Orc Chariot outside of Nomadic War? I would have liked to see that spelled out one way or the other, because I think you can, but other people think you can't. Let's have it clarified. All that there for the Ravening Hordes. Moving on to the Forces of Fantasy, again, quite a short one. First of all, Imperial Griffin. Delete 2 heads from the end of the Imperial Griffin's list of special rules. This is fine. It's because it doesn't need to be on the special rules. It's in the you can purchase this upgrade option, so there's no reason for it to be in the special rules Then we've got an update to the Arcane Journal Mountain Hordes. The Axe of Dargo changed the strength characteristic of the Axe of Dargo from S+2 to S+1. This is a balance change for a book that isn't out yet. People don't like seeing those. The normal response is, I can't believe that my book's out of date already. I get that, and I get that Games Workshop should be doing a better job at copy editing, but also I would rather have the rules fixed as soon as possible. So happy to see that here, even though it is slightly odd that the book that isn't even out yet has been FAQ'd. On to the FAQs. For the Dwarves, can a Royal Champion in a unit of hammers put a weapon rune on their Great Hammer? It says no, weapon runes can only be put on a hand weapon or great weapon, and while a Great Hammer is similar to a great weapon, it is not a great weapon. That's interesting. That's something I hadn't considered. It makes sense because the Great Hammer is a special weapon. It's got its own set of rules, and buffing that might be too good, but I think that's a little bit of a shame. I don't know that it would have been a problem to allow them to. When a model with the Slayer of Demons, or Slayer of Dragons special rule hits an enemy unit using the Deathblow special rule, does that hit benefit from the Slayer special rule? Yes. Perfect. Basically what this means is when you do your auto hit for dying, you still always hit on a 4+. Sorry, always wound on a 4+, I should say. This is good. It's a pretty weak rule as it stands, so having that clarification is quite nice. Can a steam tank's steam cannon fire Grapeshot for the Empire? Yes, Grapeshot can be fired by any cannon that uses the cannon fire special rule. So this is something I would have liked to have seen spelled out in the base FAQ, because it doesn't just affect the steam tank. One of the things that affects is the ogres, because I believe the ogre, their cannon on Chariot, whose name has completely gone in my mind, I believe that has cannon fire as a special rule. So it would be nice to see that put in the correct place, but interesting to have that clarified there. Can a steam tank's engineer, commander, and steam cannon both shoot during the same turn? Yes. The engineer doesn't fire the steam cannon. Imagine there's a very hot and bothered crew hidden away inside the steam tank whose endeavours leave the engineer commander free to fire his own weapon. Interesting choice of wording there. I don't know what the crew is doing under the cupola there, but I guess the less asked about that one, the better. Good though, you can fire the upgrade gun and the steam cannon. Otherwise, why would you be able to buy one? So I like that change. Can a Wood Elf army that includes an allied contingent place an additional wood using the Woodland Ambush rule? Yes, however, if you take Wood Elves as an ally, you can't use that. So basically just means if you're playing with Wood Elves, if it's the main force, you can still get their free wood that they get for being Wood Elves. If you're using them as a small part of the army, so you say you bring a couple of units to go with your Empire, you can't. Again, this is an allies rule. I'm not really bothered about allies rules, but nice to have that fully clarified. And that's that. That is the end of the FAQ. This has been a whirlwind non-stop tour. This is something that I've been talking to people about all day. So these are not just my opinions. This has been a lot of questions asked and answered over the course of the day. However, people are still arguing about this as I'm recording. So there's full chats on Discords and Reddits where people are disputing interpretations of the rules. I think what I've said here is the correct interpretation, but if you disagree, if there's anything that you think is should be ruled differently or should be interpreted differently, do let me know in the comments. I would much rather know instead of getting something wrong. Maybe we'll come to an agreement there. Thanks for watching. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, there's a link to subscribe over here. I really appreciate the support I've received over the last few months, and I'm looking forward to improving the channel and bringing you more content as the months go on. Down below are all the links. There's the Element affiliate link, all of our links to Discord, the 40k sister channel, everything else that we're doing down below. And on this side, there's another video. You don't have to click it, but you could. You could click it.